Yesterday morning, online forums, such as Reddit, suddenly began circulating a file titled The Secret of Danielle Colby. This file quickly caught the attention of a large number of internet users, especially fans of the reality TV show American Pickers, where Danielle Colby is a prominent figure. Upon opening the file, people discovered documents that were allegedly leaked from a government database, revealing previously undisclosed information about Danielle Colby's past. These documents not only refer to the periods when Danielle was missing, but also link her to a mysterious organization described as an ancient cult that specializes in using ancient artifacts to perform supernatural rituals. The coincidence between the times Danielle disappeared and the activities of this cult has raised many suspicions within the community. Could the information in this leaked file be true? Does the cult really exist, or is it merely a product of imagination? And most importantly, is Danielle Colby truly connected to this mysterious organization? These questions remain unanswered as we delve deeper into each part of the story. Part 1. A Forgotten Childhood. According to documents from FBI records, Danielle was born in 1975 in Davenport, Iowa, into a strict traditional Mormon family. The Colby family placed great importance on obedience, especially for women. An excerpt from a 1986 report by the Iowa Child Protective Services stated, "There have been at least 2 reports of yelling at night and signs of emotional abuse towards the children at the Colby residence." Although there was not enough evidence to prosecute, Danielle Colby's name was subsequently added to the social care system's watch list with the ID number IACH 245675. An additional psychological report indicated that Danielle showed signs of complex anxiety disorder from a very young age. A former friend, Sarah T., who had lived near the Colby family in the Deer Creek area, shared with the Iowa Mirror in a 2021 interview. Danielle was very quiet, always smiling with the surroundings. I once saw her drawing a crumbling castle and saying that she had lived there in a past life. Initially, this story was seen as mere innocent imagination, but in the FBI records, experts did not overlook this detail. They considered it an early sign of obsessive memory, a condition often seen in individuals who have experienced severe mental trauma. Another noteworthy piece of information came from Danielle's half-brother, Rick H., who said, "We weren't close, but every time I visited her house, I always felt something eerie. Danielle once told me, 'There are basements under the basement and not everyone is allowed in.'" Rick also confirmed that Danielle was locked in the basement for several hours whenever she did something wrong. One of his unforgettable memories was of seeing Danielle standing in the basement holding a headless doll, whispering, "I won't speak anymore." In an appendix to the file, there is a note from Dr. Marianne Solberg, a psychologist who had counseled Danielle in her youth. Danielle exhibited self-harming behavior when she was only 13. She didn't speak much, but I remember the look in her eyes. There was something in her eyes, as if she carried a story no one was allowed to know. In a private interview with an independent journalist, Marianne also revealed that Danielle had once said she heard singing coming from beneath the wooden floor at night, and she believed that other people lived in the lower levels of her house. It's worth noting that most of these details have never been widely disclosed. The public only knows that Danielle attended an art school and later became a famous burlesque dancer before joining the television industry. However, there is a strange gap between these two phases, a silence that lasted nearly a decade. FBI behavioral analysis experts noted in a 2012 report that those who suffer emotional abuse in childhood may develop extreme defense mechanisms, such as creating a second persona to survive, often an image that is completely opposite to their deep-seated fears. If the documents are to be believed, Danielle's retro warrior persona could merely be an outer shell, while inside is a child who has never dared to confront the past where she was once imprisoned. Another factor that caught the attention of investigators was Danielle's passion for antiques and religious artifacts from a young age. In a personal essay from 11th grade, which is now archived at Davenport Central High School, Danielle wrote, "I want to find things that people have touched hundreds of years ago, because I believe they hold the breath of the past. While a love of antiques is not rare, the belief that these objects hold the breath raises questions for criminal experts. Was there someone, or something, that instilled this belief in her from an early age? FBI documents also list at least 4 small thefts involving the Colby family between 1984 and 1989, including stolen religious items, old crosses, and a Latin Bible taken from a local church library. In all cases, no one was arrested. However, one suspicious coincidence is that all the incidents occurred within an 8-kilometer radius of where Danielle lived, and at the time, she was only between 10 and 14 years old. At the end of the file, in a section titled Pre-Formation Stage, Personality Signs, there is a handwritten note marked in red, possibly from a senior agent, with the following line: "She was not the main character from the beginning, but perhaps she was chosen beforehand, or pushed down this path step by step." What makes a little girl from Iowa know more about the maps of ancient European tunnels than the museum staff? Part 2. The Mysterious Disappearance. In 1997, Danielle Colby was just 22 years old. At that time, she was a burlesque artist, gaining some attention with her underground performances in the Midwest. While she wasn't particularly well known within the street artist community, Danielle began to be mentioned as a retro warrior, full of courage and mystery. However, on one unforgettable day in March, Danielle suddenly disappeared without a word, without any announcements, and leaving no traces behind. According to leaked records, her disappearance was reported by the local police in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, after a housemate, Elaine D., informed them that Danielle hadn't returned home for 2 weeks and had left without her phone identification or anything except a small backpack. An investigation report from April 2, 1997 stated there were no signs of forced entry struggle or coercion. Danielle's room was oddly tidy, with only an old black and white photograph left face down on the table. This photo, as described in the records, was a picture of an ancient temple whose location was unclear, with a circular symbol placed in the center of the ground. What was particularly surprising was that from 1997 to 1999, there were no medical records, banking transactions, credit activities, or travel records under Danielle Colby's name across the United States. Nearly 2 years passed without any sign of her, as if she had completely vanished from the civil map. In a rare interview in 2009, when asked about that period, Danielle simply replied, "I needed time to find myself. Sometimes we have to withdraw to listen to the voice in the darkness." This vague response led many to believe it was just a personal crisis. However, the FBI's records told an entirely different story. According to an internal investigation report marked Classified Level 3, in July 1998, a park ranger at the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Tennessee, reported seeing a woman wandering near an abandoned Civil War-era camp. She wore a black mesh dress, a silk hat, and carried a thick leather-bound notebook. She did not respond to any questions from the ranger, only signaling for silence before disappearing into the woods. Notably, when this description was revisited in 2024, the facial recognition AI deployed by the FBI confirmed there was an 86% likelihood that the woman was Danielle Colby. Furthermore, a former boyfriend of Danielle, Michael R., told the FBI in 2003, "Danielle once told me that she was working for a man called the Archivist. According to Michael, this man was at least 20 years older than Danielle, spoke 4 languages, and lived in places without a specific address. He was the one who had taught Danielle how to read ancient maps, decode symbols, and understand what ancient artifacts could reveal." When asked further, Michael admitted he had never met the archivist, but confirmed she fully trusted him. "Once Danielle told me, he doesn't belong to this time." In additional documents, the FBI cited an encrypted email exchange between 2 unidentified individuals using a cipher similar to those used in transnational crime investigations. One email line read, "The girl of smoke has returned. The circle is intact. The archivist approved the vessel." Many linguistic experts believe that this was not the language of typical criminals, but resembled the jargon of a secret society where members were referred to with symbolic titles such as vessel or circle. The FBI records also contained a behavioral analysis stating Danielle Colby between 1997 and 1999 was likely transformed, not only in terms of awareness, but also in her social role. Her disappearance does not mean she was coerced. It is possible that she voluntarily went underground within a secret structure. The story became even more puzzling when in November 1999, Danielle suddenly reappeared without any explanation, without interviews, and never clarifying what had happened. She began appearing at art clubs in Chicago, but this time with a completely different demeanor, silent, reflective, yet sharper. Her burlesque performances now incorporated ancient symbols, using props like human skin masks, leather maps, and classical Gothic music. A performance video from 2000 shown at the Dark Motifs exhibition in New York depicted Danielle stepping out of a wooden box carved with images of a snake and human eyes. Behind the stage was a round symbol identical to the one seen in the face-down photograph found in 1997. The connection between them became clear. She hadn't returned by chance, but as if she had completed some ritual and was recreating her image in a different form. So the biggest question is, where did Danielle go during those 2 years? Who trained her? And more importantly, why would an ordinary person become the center of a series of events connected to ancient symbols, secret societies, and even mystical beliefs? At the end of the leaked files, Agent MJH, now retired, left a final warning. If you think this is just the story of a famous person with a complicated past, you haven't seen the whole picture. Danielle Colby didn't disappear. She transformed. Part 3. Connection to Antiquities. Trafficking. There is something quite intriguing that even the most loyal fans of the show American Pickers sometimes overlook Danielle Colby's deep knowledge of religious artifacts and antiques from outside the United States. While the show primarily focuses on classic American items like early Harley-Davidson motorcycles, 1950s gas station signs, or old storefront models, a keen observer will notice that Danielle always has a strong reaction to religiously symbolic objects or items from medieval Europe. In fact, there have been times when she requested that these items be kept off the air. In an unaired episode filmed in 2012 at an old warehouse in Louisiana, Danielle requested to stop filming when she discovered a chest engraved with a Celtic cross and Nordic rune symbols. Members of the film crew recall that Danielle appeared very tense at that moment, even calling a stranger and demanding that the crew leave the area immediately. Initially, the incident was thought to be an emotional reaction, but according to leaked records, the FBI has noted at least 3 events between 2000 and 2008 that could be directly related to Danielle Colby and a network of interstate antiquities smuggling. One of the most prominent cases was the investigation codenamed Operation Iron Dagger in 2002, which was conducted by the FBI in cooperation with the Department of Homeland Security to dismantle smuggling rings transporting antiquities from Europe and the Middle East into the United States. According to the post-investigation report, a handwritten record seized at the scene in Atlanta, Georgia, described a woman with a rockabilly style and Iowa accent and a keen understanding of the value of items, but who only dealt in cash and always withdrew before being filmed. The FBI used handwriting recognition tools comparing samples from the contract Danielle signed with the History Channel in 2011, and the results matched 80%. An agent involved in the operation who requested anonymity shared via encrypted email in 2024. We tracked a silver cross inlaid with carnelian unearthed from a Celtic grave in Wales. This item later appeared in the hands of a private collector in Texas. According to gathered information, it was transported via New Orleans, a route that Danielle traveled through in 2001. Another incident occurred in 2005 when a group transporting illegal antiquities was caught at the Mexico-Arizona border. Among the seized items were a marble statue of the Egyptian goddess Bastet, an ancient Latin Bible, and a leather notebook containing a medieval treasure map written in a mix of Old French and Greek. Notably, at the bottom right corner of the notebook, there was a strange symbol stamped in purple ink, identical to a small tattoo on Danielle's right wrist, which she had never explained. On the Reddit forum, r/antique, smuggling a user named PastArchivist88, shared in late 2023. I met the retro girl at a black market in the suburbs of Kansas in 2006. She didn't use her real name, but she recognized the value of a Syrian inlaid stone plaque before the seller could even introduce it. She paid 3 times the price and vanished before anyone could ask more. The post was removed after 18 hours, but it was saved and extracted into community investigation records. The FBI also reported that between 2000 and 2009, at least 17 antiques worth between $10,000 and $250,000 were traded through private auction houses, but their origins could not be traced. Of those, 6 experts identified hidden symbols matching the double circle emblem, a symbol associated with the secret organization Custode Lucas, which will be discussed in more detail in Part 7. So why does Danielle Colby seem to be connected to these items? Could she be aware that some of the artifacts she has owned or appraised might have been stolen relics from legitimate archaeological sites? Thomas Fifth, Moulin's a famous antique collector, once shared in an interview with Occult Collections magazine. I met Danielle at an antique fair in Paris in 2007. She was dressed simply no makeup, but her eyes were cold, the kind of person who isn't there to buy, but to trade. What's noteworthy is that despite the many rumors and ambiguous evidence, Danielle has never been charged in any antiquities smuggling case. When asked about the rumors surrounding her past in a 2018 interview, she merely smiled and said, "I've always loved history, and sometimes to touch history, you have to walk through nameless doors." At the end of the leaked records, there was a note from Agent L.R. Kane, a behavioral analysis expert. Danielle Colby is not just a collector of antiques. Some items carry memories, rituals, and even curses. No one loves antiques like she does, except those who know that these artifacts might trigger the inexplicable. Part 4. Rise to Fame and the Forged Mask. If you've ever watched American Pickers, you're likely to remember Danielle Colby as a distinctive character, known for her sharp-wit humor, a bit of rebellion, and her deep knowledge of antiques. She is the woman behind the desk at the antique archaeology store, serving as the link between the two hosts and the treasure owners across the United States. She created a strong impression, an independent woman with a retro style who is both a manager, a hunter, and a feminist icon. But is that truly who she is? According to internal documents from the History Channel, Danielle was not initially part of the official cast in the original 2009 casting. She was initially invited to work as a stylist and provide set advice. However, during a meeting in Des Moines, Iowa, when Danielle unexpectedly decoded an engraving on an old U.S. Navy compass, a symbol even experts could not recognize, she was nominated for the position of store manager. In the nominations sent to the executives, the producers noted, "She not only has knowledge of antiques, but also has an unusual on-camera presence. Everything seems to be drawn toward her." That was the turning point. When American Pickers aired in 2010, Danielle quickly became a phenomenon. Fans not only admired her intelligence and rockabilly style, but were also captivated by something deeper, an unsolved mystery. One fan shared on a forum, "She's like she stepped out of the 19th century bringing things we just can't fully understand." However, behind the spotlight, another story began to unfold. One of the producers, referred to as DM, revealed that Danielle always kept her distance from the crew. She never ate lunch with the team, always arrived on set before filming started, and left immediately after her scenes were done. What was even more unusual was the private car she always drove herself to the set. According to technicians, Danielle never allowed anyone near her car, and once even demanded the firing of a lighting technician after he accidentally touched the rear door handle. Once, while filming an episode at a warehouse in Pennsylvania, the director asked Danielle to help open a peculiar wooden chest, said to be from Eastern Europe in the 17th century. Upon seeing the chest, her face immediately froze and her eyes became vacant. She stepped back, said nothing, and then quietly left the set. Later, the episode was canceled in the production diary. There was only one brief note. DC refused to film for personal reasons. No footage with the intersecting circle symbol. The intersecting circle, a detail not to be overlooked as it appeared in Danielle's leather notebook in contraband artifacts and in a small tattoo on her wrist. An unnamed post-production staff member added, "I once edited a scene where Danielle walked into an old warehouse in Missouri. In one shot, the red light from the camera revealed a tattoo on her collarbone. It wasn't a lotus like she claimed. It was a symbol very similar to what I'd seen in books about ancient European cults, a seal of passage used in initiation rituals." Around this time, Danielle began receiving anonymous letters. According to confidential internal documents from the History Channel, at least 5 handwritten letters and 1 photograph were sent to the production office between 2012 and 2014. The letters contained symbols resembling rune alphabets written in dark blue ink with no return address. One of the photographs in particular showed Danielle standing in front of her house at night, taken from a high angle. Clearly, someone had been watching her. The police got involved but could not trace the origin of the letters. At this point, suspicions about Danielle within the production team began to grow. A security report encrypted under the name Glass Veil was sent to the production company's executives, stating personnel DC exhibits excessive reactions to certain artifacts and refuses to cooperate at locations associated with ancient religions. She shows signs of extreme anxiety when handling objects with ritualistic elements. A soft monitoring and limited filming schedule at high-risk locations are recommended. Despite this, Danielle's public reputation continued to grow. She amassed millions of fans, appeared on magazine covers, and was invited to speak about feminism. However, the real person behind the public image, as recounted by witnesses, seemed to increasingly disconnect from the persona she created. Jody T., a member of the design team, recalled, "I once heard her talking to herself in the makeup room. Not mumbling, but as if she was having a conversation with someone. One time I saw her looking into the mirror, speaking in a different voice, deeper, almost like chanting." This raised the theory that she comes from a secret society seemed even more convincing. So which secret society? Many believe that the traces Danielle left behind are linked to the Ordo Antiqua Lux secret society. Part 5. The Ordo Antiqua Lux cult. Most cults throughout history have centered around a leader, a divine belief, or at least a clear moral code. However, Ordo Antiqua Lux, which translates to the Order of Ancient Light, does not follow any recognized religious model. This organization first appeared in Vatican records in 1973, following a mysterious disappearance in the Busigi Mountains in Romania, when 11 locals and 2 archaeologists vanished without a trace. The Vatican files, later released in an internal report in 2012, referred to Ordo Antiqua Lux as an undetermined heretical organization, without gods, without a leader, and without promoting any belief system. The only symbol they use is a single eye crossed out, an image that appears multiple times in ancient manuscripts, including the notebook once owned by Danielle. What sets Ordo Antiqua Lux apart is that they do not teach a doctrine, but rather preserve knowledge. Their sole principle, recorded in a 17th century Latin manuscript, is "Veris memoria non agnoscitur a historia." True memory is never acknowledged by official history. This phrase is not just a slogan, but could be the central philosophy of the entire organization. This world cannot accept true memories because they contradict the officially recognized history. This cult does not have financial records, no fixed meeting place, but traces of their existence appear sporadically during hidden periods of history. In a study at the Museum of Light Memory in Belgium, Professor Matthias Ehrlich discovered over 40 symbols matching Ordo's logo in stone carvings across Transylvania, Bosnia, northern Greece, and notably in the American Midwest, especially in the states of Illinois and Iowa. The coincidence between the time of Danielle Colby's disappearance and ritual activities recorded in Peoria, Illinois, which was once the center of a warehouse believed to be a gathering point for Ordo from 1991 to 1995, has attracted the attention of researchers. Among the materials collected from the 2024 tour bus, in addition to notebooks, was a handwritten letter addressed to Danielle's daughter. Although the year is not specified, the paper's oxidized traces suggest the letter dates to around 2002. One line in the letter reads, "If Mom doesn't return, don't trust the history that replaces her." This forms a direct link between Danielle and the core principle of the cult. The truth begins to become difficult to define. Could this be a secret society operating under a philosophy against history, or just an ancient knowledge preservation system where no one is allowed to understand, only to retain? In a rare press conference at the Smithsonian after reviewing notes from Danielle's notebook, Dr. J. Kendrick, an expert in non-linear knowledge culture, stated, "Danielle didn't keep a journal. She backed up. She encoded, and perhaps even she didn't understand why she did it." One point to note is that many symbols in Colby's notebook clearly resemble the Ogham language, an ancient Celtic script not used for literal recording, but to convey images in the mind. This suggests that Ordo Antiqua Lux does not operate based on linear knowledge in written form, but according to a deep memory model, where humans become tools to preserve collective knowledge. According to Professor Mariko Abe at the University of Tokyo, who studied the phenomenon of non-verbal knowledge transmission in ancient East Asian cults, Ordo may have applied mirror rituals to pack memories into selected individuals. If they really didn't need people to understand, but only to remember, then Danielle is the ideal model fragmented memory, a person with gaps in time and the ability to hold symbolic objects obsessively. From this, the question is no longer simply, does Danielle have a connection to the cult, but rather, is she holding knowledge that even she is unaware of? And if this is true, then the demand for transparency in the leaked documents is not just curiosity, but an ethical line between disclosing personal memory and interfering with ancient knowledge systems. An anonymous behavioral analyst from the DHS in an internal report wrote, "If Ordo Antiqua Lux truly exists as a network of memory storage, then Danielle Colby could be an unactivated link. Every symbol, object, and word of hers, even if seemingly disconnected, serves one single purpose: to await reactivation." Currently, there is still no legal evidence strong enough to confirm that Danielle is a member of this cult. However, the presence of Ordo symbols in her private life, from necklaces, notebooks, keychain symbols, to messages for her daughter, forms an undeniable chain of connections. If all these hypotheses are true, then Colby is not just someone who has been in contact with the cult. She may very well be the keeper of a part of history that the world has refused to acknowledge. Part 6, Clues You Don't Want to Remember. If a person truly carries a part of knowledge that isn't their own, the first sign doesn't come from symbols, but from the people around them. In the case of Danielle Colby, close witnesses, her daughter, stage colleagues, backstage staff, have shared fragmented details that seem meaningless at first. But when pieced together, they create a strange picture. No one truly knows who she is. In an episode of a podcast titled Shadows of the Van, released in March 2024, Danielle's daughter, whose name is kept hidden and who is currently studying sociology at the University of Oregon, shared a detail that sent the Reddit community into a frenzy. "There are nights when I wake up because I hear my mom talking to herself. But it's not a monologue. It's as if she's recalling, but not her own memory." She described whispered dialogues in a strange language, sometimes switching to Latin, at other times repeating words like a mantra. "One night I heard my mom say, 'Not me, but I was there.'" This account aligns with a phenomenon in clinical memory research known as dissociative recall, where an individual experiences a memory that isn't personal but carries strong emotions as if it were their own. This phenomenon is often seen in patients with severe PTSD or those who have undergone memory cleansing rituals, IV dread. A longtime stage partner of Danielle in neo-burlesque performances also mentioned an unusual detail. Whenever a performance based on the past ends, she cries. Not out of emotion, but as if something in her mind was triggered that she can't control. I asked, and Danielle simply said, "There are parts of my memory that aren't mine, but I can't help but feel they are real." Ivy also recalled a time when Danielle refused to participate in a performance based on Greek mythology because the content was too close to things she's trying to forget. Another witness, a backstage technician at a performance in Chicago in 2022, shared an equally strange story. He remembered, "When I entered the prep room, Danielle was standing in front of a mirror holding a white porcelain mask, softly saying, 'I'm not the first one to wear this.'" This simple sentence immediately evokes the mirror ritual described in many Ordo Antiqua Lux documents, a ritual where the practitioner faces the entities of old memories, not to recall them, but to record them like a new hard drive. It wasn't just the stories. Danielle's behavior also raised suspicions. According to an internal report from an FBI agent who had monitored her indirectly after a bus search in 2024, Danielle had a habit of arranging objects in an illogical order: old books, keychains, tarot cards, handwritten notes. All were placed in fixed positions as if they were tagging data. The strange thing was when this order was disrupted, she would often become confused, standing still for minutes before rearranging everything. This is a symptom known as physical context, disorientation in clinical psychology, but it could also be understood as a ritualistic act. She was protecting a living storage system. Dr. Adrian Bowles, an expert on post-ritual behaviors at McGill University, argued, "When a person has memories replaced or mixed up with information outside of their awareness, their behavior will react according to the old logical structure, but the actual memories are inaccessible. At that point, they will cling to objects like anchors, using them to keep themselves aligned with the world." And perhaps the strangest detail is a sentence caught backstage during an interview on a talk show in 2023. When the technician asked if she needed more water, Danielle, seemingly talking to herself, whispered, "I shouldn't stay here too long. Everything is starting to pile up." This audio wasn't broadcast, but it was recorded in the raw file and later leaked in a recent document. Experts believe that the repetition of these fragmented accounts forms a non-linear logic chain similar to the distributed memory model in computer science. If Danielle truly is a repository of memories, not to understand but to protect, then every word, every action of hers is a feedback signal from a living memory system struggling to protect fragments of knowledge rejected by the world. And when those closest to her, from her daughter's stage partner to backstage staff, all feel that a part of Danielle is not hers. Perhaps that part is what Ordo Antiqua Lux entrusted to her, a piece of memory that cannot be named, but cannot be lost. 7. Which hypothesis is the truth? If the first 6 parts were like piecing together fragments of a shattered memory, this section marks the point where those pieces begin to form a clearer image. Danielle Colby is not just a keeper of memories. She may very well be the repository of those memories. This is no longer a symbolic observation. It is a scientific hypothesis about human behavior with a clear basis, one that some experts refer to as the biological knowledge storage node. This hypothesis was first presented in a research paper published in the journal Memory Structures and Behavioral Containment in 2023, conducted by Dr. Marian Estrati's research team from Johns Hopkins University. According to this group, in rare cases, typically seen in patients with dissociative memory disorders, the memory system can become a repository for external knowledge that the individual is neither aware of nor able to retrieve through normal means. They call this phenomenon the host memory node. In Danielle's case, almost every factor fits dissociative memories from childhood: prolonged time gaps, symbolic ceremonial items, the act of organizing objects like data cards, and especially the phenomenon of memory non-ownership. When memories appear, she neither denies nor affirms them as her own. This consistent silence, when viewed through the lens of the hypothesis, is no longer avoidance. It is the result of a memory process that comes without a sense of ownership. Dr. Istrati, in a symposium in 2024, clarified, "A memory storage node does not store the truth. It stores the structure. It doesn't need to know what the truth is. It only needs to preserve it as it was when it was inserted." Imagine it like an unformatted hard drive, just waiting for the right decoding device to be plugged in. And if this is true, Danielle's role in this story is not one of actively hiding anything. She is a containment structure, potentially programmable, potentially exploitable, but incapable of understanding what is happening within her. The appearance of rituals, especially the mirror ritual, shows that the memory activation process is not merely symbolic. In a 2020 study by the European Institute for Consciousness, scientists described the phenomenon of memory without awareness, where humans acquire knowledge through images, symbols, sounds, or gestures without the use of language or conscious reasoning. The closest case described was a 9-year-old Serbian girl who, after participating in a traditional ritual of a minority group, was able to draw detailed maps of 14th century temples, despite never having studied history. In Danielle's case, the strongest evidence lies in how she reacts to triggering elements, like when she organizes her notebooks, touches a pendant, or accidentally repeats untraceable language symbols. These actions are not a disorder. They are signals of a memory system attempting to respond to packaged information. An anonymous investigator, after accessing Danielle's touring cabin during the February 2024 search, described a strange sensation. It wasn't like entering an artist's room. It felt like entering a storage facility designed to preserve everything intact. Everything was arranged in its proper place. Nothing was askew. Nothing was random, he concluded. She doesn't live in that vehicle. She's just maintaining it. The ethical aspect of this hypothesis is also controversial. If Danielle truly serves as a knowledge repository, she may be holding pieces of erased or sealed historical memories, without even knowing it. This raises the question, does she have the right to refuse access? Or because she is unaware of what she is holding, does society have the right to compel her to reveal it? A group of human rights lawyers raised this concern in a petition submitted to the U.S. Personal Data Protection Committee, calling for a redefinition of memory ownership rights for individuals holding non-personal memories. The petition includes the following statement: if memories were not created by the individual but still exist in their mind, then who has the right to demand they share them? On the other hand, some scholars, including Professor Brigitte Salomon from the University of Sorbonne, argue, if the Ordo Antiqua Lux model is correct, then Colby is not a victim. She is a protective mechanism, and this mechanism has operated successfully for over 30 years without being broken. This proves that the knowledge does not necessarily need to be revealed, it just needs to be preserved intact. Thus, an opposing conclusion was reached. Danielle Colby's silence is not a sign of guilt, but an expression of a functioning structure, where humans become cultural storage software they cannot read the contents of. And if the world is eager to decode the truth from Danielle, perhaps what we need is not a testimony but the right question. Because only a structure built from ancient knowledge would ask, who dares to ask without understanding? And so far, that question has yet to be asked correctly. Is she simply a victim of a murky past? Or is she truly an essential part of an ancient network of mysterious artifacts and long-forgotten rituals? All of these details remain mere hypotheses, but perhaps in the shadows the truth is quietly waiting to be uncovered. What do you think about Danielle Colby? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit like if you find this story worth contemplating, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next secret files.